Okay, hi guys, before I get started I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been incredibly warm in their welcoming me to YouTube. You guys are incredibly sweet and it was an amazing surprise to have such positive feedback on my last video because not really something I expected, so it was great. Thank you, you guys are amazing. Today I really wanted to start talking about photography, as you know, specifically doll photography, because it's something I'm really passionate about and I absolutely love doing. But I'll probably split it into a fair few videos because it's an incredibly vast subject and there's no way I could get it all into one video unless you want to sit and listen to me ramble for 6 hours basically. So today I'm going to be talking about my gear and how I shoot, and I'll discuss, you know, a few other options and everything, because the way I shoot is by no means the best. It's kind of just works for me, what works for me. In the meantime though, doll introduction, since I did say that would be a thing that I was going to do. For anyone who's followed me for any length of time on DeviantArt or Tumblr or anything, you're probably familiar with London here. She's a Tan Narae 40cm, slim MSD, so generally anything that fits a Unoa tends to fit her, which is fabulous. Some really cute stuff for Unoas out there. She is old. She's yellow as hell because she was made in, I think if I can remember correctly, it was 2005. I've had her for maybe 4 or 3 years of that. But you know, I don't particularly care that she's yellowed because, you know, she's French resin, it's gonna happen. You kind of just have to deal with it. She has a face up by Sleep Pattern, so I'll include a link to his face up thread at the bottom because he's painted quite a few of my dolls. Although to be honest, I'm kind of considering getting her repainted because as beautiful as her face up is, it's kind of not really doing it for me that much anymore. And she kind of just needs a bit of love and affection in that way to maybe, you know, tone down the yellowing a little bit. She is wearing a wig by Tiny Bear. I can't praise her wigs highly enough, though, you know, there's a few issues. You do occasionally get bald patches in the parting and such, but you know, it's to be expected with mohair, and for £12 you can't really complain. She's got 3 Tiny Bear wigs, I think, so yeah, her hair colour changes quite a lot. She's wearing a shirt from the Sugar Doll shop. Her skirt is actually a little dress that's from Saddle, which is part of a set, and her leggings are from Liquid Sugar, so I'll include links to all of their shops below as well. And you know, I love her leggings so much, and Steffi, who runs Liquid Sugar, is absolutely amazing. She's a sweetheart, I love her to pieces, and I do own quite a few pairs of her leggings, which she made for me because she's fabulous. They're adorable and the fit is absolutely amazing, mostly because I lent her London so she could make them, so you know, they're kind of tailored to fit Narae. So if you have one, perfect place to buy them from, and definitely very, very reasonably priced, can't even speak today. So yeah, I definitely recommend Liquid Sugar. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything else to tell you about her. London is one of those dolls who I bought without really having a character for her, and for whatever reason I've kind of never gotten around to creating one for her, but which is weird because for me all of my dolls tend to be personifications of RP characters or characters I write about, so it's a little bit weird to have one around for so long without having a concrete story for her, but it's what works, it's fine. I just really love shooting her. She's an absolute dream to work with. Yeah, so that's London. So doll intro's out of the way. Like I said, I wanted to talk about gear today. I'm currently shooting with a Canon 60D, which I can't show you because I'm shooting my video on it, but you know, it's a great camera. It's generally what's referred to as a prosumer, which means it's kind of at the high end of the consumer market, with just being on the cusp of professional level stuff. So I personally got it because it was what my budget would stretch to. I wanted a 5D, but I haven't been able to afford it yet. Because I do shoot people and weddings and such, as well as dolls, and you know, I want to be a full-time photographer. So yeah, so the 60D, it does the job. You know, I got it 2 years ago. It's obviously, it's got plenty of bells and whistles. It does HD video and all this, and this is kind of the first time I've really started to play around with that. Which is why I apologise, you know, for my crappy cutting and everything, because I'm still very new to the whole video thing. Yeah, so photography wise it's a fantastic camera, as most of the SLRs in the Canon range are. My first SLR was a Canon 350D, which is one of the very early digital SLRs that they did, and it served me really well for a couple of years, and then I upgraded to a 450D and then finally to the 60D, and I'm hoping to upgrade to a 5 eventually, but who knows when that'll be. You know, I can't really speak for Nikon cameras because I've only ever used Canon ones, but as I understand it, you know, they're pretty comparable price and spec wise. I've never really understood the whole competitive side of it. It's a bit like the Mac versus PC debate, you know, there's plus sides, downsides to both, and at the end of the day they both do what they're supposed to do. Before I got my first SLR, when I first got into photography, which was pretty much about the same time I got into dolls, my first camera was, I can't remember what it was some weird little Fuji compact that was trying to be an SLR, in that you got little lenses that you could screw into it, and it was okay, you know, it took photos and that's what mattered, because I'm a big believer in, if you've got something that you can create an image with, it'll do, you know. You don't need the best, most high-spec equipment to produce fantastic images. I think a lot of people in the doll hobby especially fall into the trap that they think, oh hey, I've got this $500 doll now, I need an expensive camera to shoot it with, which isn't the case at all. You know, you can create some absolutely amazing images with compacts, or you know, you could even shoot with your phone, which I love to do. There's a few apps that I really enjoy, which would be Hipstamatic and VSCO, which I think I've talked about before on the Resin Aperture challenge from last month, or the month before rather, where we were doing camera, phone camera photos even, and you know, it's, and the thing I really love about taking photos on my phone is that it kind of forces you to take a step back, consider what you're doing a little bit more, because you don't have control over depth of field and everything, and it can be really challenging and a lot of fun. And you know, there's no shame in not having the most amazing equipment ever, because at the end of the day what matters is translating what's in here to an image. And you know, you can have the best equipment in the world and still be a shit photographer. So obviously, because I shoot with an SLR, I have to obviously select what kind of lens I'm going to shoot with. A lot of the time I shoot with a Tamron 25 to 75mm 2.8 lens, which I got initially to replace the kit lens that came with my camera, because it's a zoom and it's, you know, it's kind of an all-round lens, but it's still pretty fast because it opens all the way up to 2.8. When I'm talking about f-stops and numbers like 2.8, 1.4 and all this, by the way, it's to do with the aperture, which is how you get a shallow depth of field, which I'll also include a link in the description to a tutorial I've done that explains how f-stops work. And since I already explained it, there's kind of a little point rehashing it all, especially because I'll probably get myself confused and get everyone confused, because it's the kind of thing you need to read instead of being told verbally. But you know, once you get your head around it, it's pretty straightforward. But you know, at the end of the day, the smaller the number the better as far as I'm concerned, because I really love shooting with shallow depth of field. So my other lens of choice is my 50mm. I actually have two of these at the moment because the autofocus on this one's gone kind of dodgy. But this one's a Canon 50mm 1.4. The other one is a 1.8, which means, you know, there's barely any difference in how wide they can go, but you know, this one was £300 whereas the other one was 80. So I kind of got the other one as a bit of a stopgap to do me until I managed to get this one repaired. So I really love 50mm. They can be a bit tricky to master because they're prime lenses, which means they don't have zooms. So instead of zooming in and out, you have to physically move yourself, and you know, you can only get so close, and even if you're a tiny little bit off, your focus can be completely off, especially if you're shooting at a really wide aperture. But for me, it's worth it because I really love shooting with a shallow depth of field. And when I say a shallow depth of field, I mean something like this. You see the way the background there is blurred out? That's what we call a shallow depth of field. And, you know, me and a lot of other doll photographers do it because it's so great for directing the eye into the shot and focusing it on your subject. Because, you know, if you're shooting with a fairly deep depth of field, you've got lots of things going on, especially if you've got a busy background. And you know, it's a bit distracting, you know, but I'll get more into that when I talk about compositional stuff and shooting in general versus just straight up equipment. Lens choices are pretty much infinite though, you know, you can spend anything from £50 to a few thousand on a lens. And you know, it all depends on what you want to achieve and what your budget is. You know, as a lot of the camera equipment is. But personally, my 28 to 75 and my 50mm do the job for me, and that's all I've ever really needed for doll stuff. Okay, so besides your camera and your lens, your other consideration when you're taking a photograph tends to be about light and, if need be, getting more of it into your shot. Personally, I really prefer shooting with natural light whenever possible, because I just find it a lot easier to work with it and gives a lot more aesthetically pleasing results than shooting with flash. But you know, sometimes you don't really have the option and you've got to introduce light back into the shot somehow. Personally, my first port of call would be a reflector. Now, you can make a reflector out of something as simple as a piece of paper or a piece of tin foil, but what I use is one of these, which is a 5-in-1 reflector, and these are absolutely fantastic because, like it says, there's 5-in-1. So on the outside you've got a silver side, which is the one I generally use, which bounces a lot of light back, which if I do that you can kind of see, you can get a sense for it there. On the back you've got black, so you can block light out if you have to. On the inside we have a gold side, which I don't think I've ever actually used it, because it tends to cast far too much of a yellow cast for me, which isn't very flattering when you're shooting your dolls, which are kind of yellow in the first place. On the other side, in the inside, there's a white side, which, as you know, you'd suggest you get a slightly softer light than you would from the straight up silver side, but you know, it still reflects quite a bit. And the inside panel, which besides giving it structure, acts as a diffuser, so if you're shooting on a very bright day, or you want to diffuse your flash or something, they can be great for that. And yeah, so the reason I have such a huge one is because I shoot people as well, but generally for doll stuff I want to get a much smaller one. These generally run, you know, on Amazon or eBay for about £12 to £15 for a metre wide one, so smaller ones will be cheaper obviously, and you know, they fold down and they'll go in a carrying case, so you know, for actual carrying them they're not so bad. It's just a bit unwieldy when you're trying to shoot with them. Let's see if I can unfold it without smacking myself in the face. There we go. So yeah, that's why I want a much smaller one, because it's a bit tricky when you're trying to balance your camera in one hand and this in the other one, while with it still being effective. But yeah, so smaller ones probably preferable for doll stuff, but like I say, I've got it because I do people as well. So yeah, whether it's a bought reflector or a kind of impromptu one, they can save you a lot of hassle later in post-processing, because you've got less to worry about. Because essentially my philosophy is, the better the photo is before you take it, the better it's going to be with the final outcome. So, you know, trying to get more light into a shot before you take it is preferable to, you know, adjusting the levels and the brightness and everything in Photoshop if you can avoid it. Because, you know, when you start editing things too much, your image quality suffers and all of this, and it just generally produces a much better result. Besides your reflector, there are obviously other ways of introducing more light into your shot by artificial means, one of which is with these, or an on-camera flash, but this is an off-camera flash. This is a Canon Speedlight 430EX2. I have no idea what that means, except for the fact, you know, it's Canon, so it talks to my camera, so I don't have to worry about triggers and stuff. I essentially got it because it was a fairly mid-range one I could afford. I got it mostly for college stuff, because we were doing a lot of stuff with artificial light, but it's not my favourite way of lighting shots by a long shot. But, you know, it can come in handy sometimes. My personal favourite trick is to sit it behind my doll, like here-ish, and firing it off to create a hair light or a backlight or some kind of really obnoxious flare going on, like so. But, you know, besides that, you can use it to introduce more light into the room. I think there's a lot of stigma attached to using flashes in your photography in the hobby, because we see a lot of people who don't really know how to use them, especially on camera ones. So you end up with this whole pasty, startled looking doll because you fired this thing off in their face, and that's never a flattering way to light anything, ever, you know. Generally the best way to use your flash, it takes a bit of finagling if you're doing it with on-camera flash, but you know, off-camera flash is a bit easier. But the best way to do it is to point your flash, especially if you're indoors, up at the ceiling or against the wall. So you know, these things tend to move around, so you can do that, because that way you're lighting the entire space rather than just your subject, and that can create a much more flattering light. Although, you know, like I say, it's not my favourite way of lighting anything by any means. And you know, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about flash as well in regards to their UV effects on dolls, because we all know, you know, obviously if you sit a doll in the sun, it's going to turn yellow. But with flashes, the UV drop off is pretty immediate. I read an article, which I will link if I can find it, but I don't know if I can because it was a while ago now, which was discussing the effects of flashes in museums and such, because you know, you go to museums and you're generally asked not to use flashes, which in part is so they can sell more postcards and shit, but generally speaking, to create a day's worth of illumination with a flash, especially like on camera low powered ones, it would take thousands upon thousands of flash to have any kind of effect. So if you're shooting a doll once or twice a week with a flash, it's going to have no discernible effect on your doll whatsoever. So there's really nothing to worry about, you know, unless you're shooting with an incredibly high powered professional setup and shooting constantly. That's the only time you're going to have to worry. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating really, because it's one of these things that gets constantly brought up in discussions and it's complete bunkum, and it's being debunked numerous times, but you know, it keeps getting brought back up, so it's kind of frustrating to deal with. So yeah, that's flash. You know, you can get, if you're stuck with a little on camera flash, you know, on your little point and shoot, there's tricks you can use. You can use a piece of paper to diffuse it, or you know, like some kind of weird contraption to bounce it up or something, or you know, if you're shooting with an SLR, you can get boxes that you can attach to your flash on camera which will diffuse it, which is a lot better than, you know, a direct straight in the face flash, but it's still not the best solution, but you know, it's better than nothing. So besides your flash, there's obviously other ways of introducing artificial light into your shots, such as like lamps and stuff, which you can probably tell I'm using right now because it's pretty grey and dull outside, so I needed a little bit of help. The lamps I use are photography lamps, which have daylight bulbs in, which I will see if I can dig up some links for those as well, because again, I can't really show you it because I'm using them right now. And they're okay. The main issues is with sustained light is it does generate heat, or continuous light should I say. It generates heat, which can be an issue with yellowing and damaging and make things a bit uncomfortable as well. But you know, if you want to go for really dramatic lighting, they can be great for that. So, you know, again, you know, these things, they all have their upsides and their downsides. Okay, yeah, and that's kind of it for my equipment really, because, you know, like, hello doggy. Come here, say hi. This is Harvey, by the way, my idiot mutt. Hello. Yes, thank you. He's a very kissy dog, and he's a lovely boy, aren't you? Yes, but you're not the smartest of puppies sometimes. Come on, good boy. Yeah, good boy, go on. Where was I? Yeah, so that's kind of it really, because I like to keep my shooting as simple as possible, mostly because it means there's less stuff you have to carry. You know, because it's kind of hard enough already if you're lugging like a 60cm doll into the woods somewhere and you've got like 5 different bags full of stuff you don't need. So, you know, it kind of, I think experiment, definitely. I definitely experiment as much as I can. But at the same time, I think, you know, after a while you sort of get a feel for what works for you. I generally don't shoot with a tripod, and obviously I own one. And, you know, it can come in handy. You know, dolls are subjects that kind of lend themselves to it because there's not going to be much moving around with them. But personally, I find that tripods, when I shoot with them, I tend to work around the tripod more than I work around my subject. Because, you know, things get very static, and when I shoot, I like to move around a lot, essentially. Yeah, I think that's it really. I hope that was helpful. If there's anything you want clarification on, or just questions about photography in general, I'd be more than happy to answer, you know, especially if it's related to dolls. I don't pretend to know everything at all, ever, because I don't, and I'm the first to admit that. You know, and generally, you know, my way of doing things might not necessarily work for others, but it works for me, so I figured I'd share. You know, like I was saying at the start of the video, photography is a really, really vast subject, so it's kind of hard to talk about how to improve your photography without knowing what needs improving, because for different people it's different things. With that in mind, I don't know, I've kind of been thinking about doing critiques maybe or something, because you know it varies for everyone, and I'll say it again, there's absolutely no shame in not having the most expensive kit ever, because at the end of the day what matters is what you produce, not what you produce it on. Never let anyone make you feel bad because you don't own some fancy SLR. Even if you, like I say, even if you're shooting on your camera phone or some shitty little point and shoot that costs you 20 bucks, that's fine. Do, you know, when it comes to upgrading, you know, if you need to buy another piece of equipment to suit what you want to do, that's when you should upgrade, not just because you can. Because, you know, it's a bit of a waste of money to buy a $3,000 camera and have it sit on auto, basically. You know, you don't need all those bells and whistles for what you're doing. But you know, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're spending money on, go for it. You know, at the same time, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world to spend your money on. Yeah, like I say, if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And thank you again for the warm welcome to YouTube. You guys are awesome. And yeah, see you later.